Hey everybody, this is Amazing Fantasy Football. I am Josh, and that guy over there is,
Chris,
and Chrissy is, as always. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing amazing. I'm doing amazing. Life is good.
Yes.
Family's good. What else do I have to complain about?
Excellent. I don't know. I mean, like the weather, I guess it's not really that bad. At least here. If you
The
live in a
rain
different
cleared up
state,
that we were
so
supposed to get. They're still saying 30% tomorrow, but I got the front yard mowed. Some other things came up, whatever. But yeah, weather's good. I mean, I could complain, but I won't.
it's a little hot.
I mean, we could
It's
complain.
summertime. It's summertime.
We could complain about our first piece of news tonight if you want, but I digress.
I'm doing pretty good, by the way. A little tired,
How are you
but
doing, Josh? Sorry, how are you? I am an a-hole, aren't I? Sorry. I did that
it's
to my
cool,
neighbor
man.
today. They were like, "How are you doing?" I was like, "I'm good." Started my mower, went about my day. Sorry.
I do that to people at work all the time. I was just like, and like, I hate it when I'm like, well, passing. Okay, so as a lot of people listening know, I work in a hospital, and it's not a small hospital.
Oh,
It
it's
is
busy.
not
The
also not
University
a
Hospital.
general hospital.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but I'll see people I know in the hall, and then I'll be like, hey, so and so. They're like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, fine, fine, I guess. I how are you? And then it becomes like a conversation. And for those out there that don't know, I hate the stop and chat.
Small talk.
I hate it so much. Like when I go to the grocery store, I I keep my head on a swivel, constantly looking around to see if I know someone at the store because it almost
He's
always happens.
he's perfected.
Even though I moved towns, I still run
Oh
into
God,
people that I know.
he's
And so
perfected.
I constantly have to keep an eye out. It doesn't matter what time of the day either, morning, noon, night, doesn't matter. And I'm not trying to say I'm popular. I'm all I'm saying is I've spent a lot of time in a
He's
bar.
he's a local.
That's
We'll put it that
exactly
way.
where it is.
Um, so you perfected
Yeah.
like
So,
the
anyways,
360 and the 180 in a
I'll like
cart.
duck down an aisle that I don't need to go down. Like I'll get into like the health food nutrition aisle, and just to avoid a stop and chat with someone. And certain people know that I hate the stop and chat, so they will actively they'll be like,
They
oh,
just give a head
like
nod.
an
They just give
aisle
a head
away.
nod.
Like I'm at one end, they're at the complete opposite end. They're like, Josh, and I'm like,
Oh, they do it intentionally. I got you now. I got
yes, yes, they're doing it to
as
mess
they
with me.
as they should. Cheers to them.
No, no, I feel like that, and now
Hmm.
now I like to keep earbuds in, or like I'll bring my headphones here with me, and
Oh, right.
that way I can't hear people
Sorry, I didn't hear you
screaming
screaming
my
across
name.
the grocery store.
It was on purpose.
Right.
Did it look like I was ignoring you? That's because I was. Anyway,
Crotchety
so
old,
we're here to talk about
crotchety
some
old
fantasy
man.
football, and we got some. And let's pivot to our news here. Our news. We
Oh
actually have
yeah.
some
Oh
news
my
this
goodness.
week. Some
Yes. Let's
news.
not bury the lead here.
Which item of
About
news would you like to start with first?
wasn't it Achilles? I didn't even write down what the actual injury was. Well, for those of you who don't know,
Achilles, yes.
Cam Akers is done with a ruptured Achilles, I believe. I don't even think it was torn. I think they might have used the literal word ruptured. Point is, recovery is going to be a while. He's done for the season. The
Like a
obvious
year.
name that pops into one's head is Daryl Henderson.
Hmm.
We're talking about a top offense in the NFC, top offense in the NFL. Me and Josh have been lavishing praise upon Matthew Stafford, the coaching
For
staff,
years.
the running back of choice. Well, in Stafford's case, yes, the running back Cam Akers for weeks. He was kind of slotting right into that end of the first territory where we were willing to take maybe one or two receivers after several backs in the beginning of the draft. Now we're left to kind of gather the pieces, so to speak. I guess we resisted the urge to put out something quickly as far as content on it. We wanted to kind of mull it over, and some things came up. But I'm going to give you my quick 2 cents and a couple things that we've got here. Number one, when I think of fantasy football, I think of some form of PPR in most cases. Nowadays, half point at least. Henderson's targets were abysmal in the season where Akers last year was nursing torn rib cartilage. Henderson's not a workhorse type in my opinion. He's a one-cut slasher, doesn't have a whole lot of wiggle. It invokes like a Tevin Coleman type of player in my eyes, although maybe not quite as tall, maybe an inch or two.
I was gonna say faster.
Meaning Henderson's faster.
Yeah.
Maybe now. You got to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm talking about now.
Yeah, I'm talking about like more of a profile at this point in their careers. Also, even they don't. Even they didn't pick up a free agent or trade. Even if they don't pick up a free agent or trade for one, the name Gordon has been mentioned. Gurley, obviously, Yeldon, Sony Michel. I still see Henderson as like a 60-40 guy, and he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. With a little pass game usage, though, that's the kind of one of the caveats I'm gonna harp on there. The Rams know what they have in Henderson, and they still chose to draft Cam Akers in the second round last year, which, may I remind you, was their first pick of the draft because they traded their first round for Jalen Ramsey. Quick dynasty.
When is the next time that
Mm-hmm.
sorry to interrupt. When is the next time that the Rams actually are going to have a first round pick? Because they just constantly trade it away.
That is the sole reason I had to look it up, Josh. I was like, I'm pretty sure that was Ramsey year, but it's happened a couple times.
Yeah, it's happened quite a few times.
That's an aggressive front office, and they have the coaches back. And,
Sure.
and I think we have to argue that's going to still happen for another year or two. A quick dynasty dip. I'm no doctor, but the track record for players returning to form from an Achilles tear is not good, especially at the running back position. Now, we used to think the same thing about not a
ACL.
hamstring. Thank you, ACL. But even if Akers
ACL used to be a career-ending one, and same with like, Achilles. And the Achilles is actually like it's gone a long way in like the last like 5 years even.
That's a little bit
like,
of chatter I've heard. It's a little bit.
You can come back from it, and I think like as long as they A, don't baby him, and B, don't rush him back, because injuries like severe injuries like this can go one of two ways. If you rush him back, they don't heal properly. If you baby him too much, they don't heal properly. I mean. And a lot of that's on the individual person that has the injury. Keep
Work
going
ethic.
with your thing, and then I'll say my bit at the end.
Was actually to that point, since this is the last couple of comments, is kind of a dynasty angle here, is that even if he does return to form, even if we do like the medical advances, even if he's the hardest worker we've seen, etc., and we're talking best case scenario, he returns to 90% and up, right? Like 90 to 100. If he returns 100, awesome. Do you think the Rams are going to sit around and wait for that? Because we are not talking about an ACL. To your point, an ACL nowadays is what, less than 12 months? 12 months. Yeah, less than 12
Depends
months.
on the person. But
exactly. It depends on a lot of factors. But generally, is Jarwin not an ACL? We could throw him in the news. He's full go, apparently. So that's the last thing I was going to say about Akers, is that even if he does return to 100%, are we sure the Rams are going to stick around and wait for it? Because it could be more like a year and a half, with this injury, even if and just it's a value conversation. Are they going to willing to sit around? And then we have to talk about which situation will he end up in. Then we like the player.
It's hard to say.
It is.
I would assume not having the Rams salary cap information sitting in front of me, and I'm not going to actually look it up because I just want to move along, keep the show rolling.
Well, half his rookie
is that
contract
it kind of depends on. I don't think they're going to make a major play like trade for running back. I do not see it happening. I think they're going to
stay with what they have in house.
I think they're going to try and sign someone off the street for as cheap as they can get.
I misunderstood you. Gotcha. Did you say trade?
I don't think they're going to trade.
Okay, that's fine. No, I could agree with that, but I think they would either trade or sign a free agent.
To trade for a running back.
Dude, you can get a running back for like a 5th round pick. We're talking like Sony Michel, Royce
Not
Freeman.
a good one.
We're not talking about a great one in Henderson either.
Home.
How do you? Okay, but we don't need to spend any more time on Akers. All I'm saying is, how good do you think Akers is in comparison? Le'Veon Bell, I think, is washed.
He's not good at all because he's injured.
Did I say the wrong name? Daryl Henderson. I didn't say Cam Akers. Did I?
He did.
Oh, darn it.
Henderson, he'll be serviceable. Here's my take on it, and it's not necessarily. I think we're looking at the wrong aspect here. Let's forget about the Rams' backfield. This is my take on it. Yeah, sure. You want to try if you're in a dynasty and you have Cam Akers, maybe throw a Henderson trade out there and see if you can get him on the cheap.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Go for it.
Okay.
Here's my take on it. And I think you're looking at the wrong thing. I think this helps Stafford, and it helps Robert Woods, and it helps Cooper Kupp. And I think that they are going to try and duplicate what Matthew Stafford has done almost his entire career in Detroit, and that is just use the short passing game as an extension of the run game.
Absolutely, I love the passing
game. I think if that's the way, if they're going to do that, I think it's going to it might be a bumpy transition for Sean McVay as far as play calling, but I think Matthew Stafford is definitely a quarterback that can pull it off because he has been doing it for almost his
Mm-hmm.
entire career.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if anything, that really helps Cup and Woods. And, there's also Van Jefferson there too. Let's not forget about him and Higbee. So I think that this bumps their value up more.
What about Henderson? I mean, obviously it's
Having
bumped up.
having not really looked at
Wait.
like dove into my
No, we're not
rankings at
adjusting
all
rankings
to
tonight
modify
or
them.
this week or etc. Yeah, that we're not going there. But where are you
I
at with
I
him?
mean, yeah, you should try and get him. You want him on your team, but I think you're right. I don't think he's an 85% or even a 75%. He's more of a 60-40.
Okay, so we're on the same page with Henderson himself. I
Yeah,
love the
and
passing
then
ankle.
there might be some dark horse that emerges out of this backfield too that becomes fantasy relevant. It's just hard to say right now. After this news broke, what 2 days ago? You know,
Less,
we only record a show like
less.
once a week,
Oh,
so
is it 2 days now? It might actually be. My bad.
it's
I thought it was-
3 days.
Um,
Sometime within the past 72 hours,
last
Cam
two things
Akers
I would
has
say.
ruptured his Achilles.
Right. Last two things I would say is I love the passing angle that you're taking there. I completely agree. However, I think that whether it's trade or free agency, I think they're absolutely going to bring a guy in because if Henderson gets hurt, which let's be honest,
Yeah,
that's been
no,
pretty
you're right.
commonplace. We're not going to rely on the guy I wanted to mention, Xavier Jones, necessarily. Although Dynasty folks go
It's
pick him
not
up
Professor X. I'm pretty sure it's Xavier.
now. I said Xavier. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
Xavier.
the same thing. Just tomato, whatever.
No, it's not.
You're throwing an
He's
extra.
not Professor X. He's not Charles Xavier. He's Xavier Jones.
Fine. Pronounce it how
I
you
just
will.
wanted to throw an X-Men reference in there.
Is
That's all. I
that-
wasn't really trying
I
to.
know,
I
you
wasn't
threw
trying
me
to make
off,
fun
though.
of you.
Is-
I just
is-
wanted to talk about Charles Xavier.
Because he's awesome. Is the last thing I was going to
I'm a
say is
jerk,
that Henderson's been hurt, so I think they're absolutely bringing a guy because if they're going to eat, to your point, if they're going to pass more, they need to protect this guy because Stafford needs protection, and we are still there with his fantasy assets and himself and the quarterback himself. Yeah, still the offense will be fine. I just think Henderson's not a guy you want to pursue into the fourth and third round. That's ludicrous.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
We got a lot, man. We got a lot of camp and football to go. I can't wait.
All right. Yep. Let's move on to the next order of business. Just a quick recap before we move on. Actually, is that like if you're in Dynasty and you have Cam Akers on your team, I mean you're kind of boned for this year. Like you can't rely on him.
In
If-
Dynasty, I'm
hopefully,
picking up Cup. I'm like if
hopefully
that's the move, I think.
hopefully you handcuffed him with Daryl Henderson as
Oh,
one
for
should
sure.
with a lot of their running backs in Dynasty, but it was
Handcuffs
probably a
are
little bit
different in
harder to do.
Dynasty. Handcuffs are absolutely different in Dynasty.
And you can, like I said, you can try and throw out maybe a decent to cheap trade offer for Henderson, hoping that the person in your dynasty league is not really paying that much attention to the news, and
that's
blah, blah,
something
blah.
important to
It never
mention.
hurts to try it, right?
What if you're
I
the
mean,
Henderson owner in Dynasty? And then we'll get off this. What do you think? I'm holding.
What do you think? Like a third round pick? Is that too low?
I'm not like going
Or
to
is that too
hold.
high?
I'm not going to hold the Akers owners hostage. That's not usually my style.
Are we talking about
How-
David Akers now?
We're talking about Daryl Henderson, and if you're a dynasty owner of Henderson and you do not own Akers, and you have obviously the Akers owner is out there in your league, I'm not necessarily going to hold the guy hostage, but there's also other people that might be targeting said Henderson that are not the Akers owner. I'm not saying like hold to some ridiculous.
okay, so here,
maybe
how
he
about
blows
this?
up in week 2 or 3. That's when you sell. Like don't take
Or
I don't know, below a first, maybe? I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
first?
A second at least. I'm not going to give him up. I'll keep him, especially if he's been sitting there doing nothing for me and I've got some depth at running back in front of him and I'm like, well, he's been sitting here. Why would I give him up? I've got.
I was going to say the
the
exact opposite. If I have plenty of depth, I'm going to look at him and just be like, I'm going to take the best offer available right now because I
Well,
don't
that's
think
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That best offer might be a late first, in my opinion, Josh. I think so.
I got what you're saying.
A
I'm
team that's
sorry.
like in
I think I misheard
championship
you.
mode.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Oh no, you're fine. Maybe a team in championship mode that's like, dude, my first is gonna be like 9 through 12 at latest, or I win it all. They might be, in particular if they're an Akers owner, but even if they're not, they might be sitting there looking, my 112, my 111. Maybe it's a 201. I'll give that wiggle room. Or so, and obviously we're all predicting what record that said dynasty team will end up at. But there's something to be had there. There's a deal to be had there. I also really like the cup angle, but that's all I have to say.
Cup Woods, that entire receiving core.
Yep,
right
Higbee
there.
and redraft. Yeah, I might see some big value there. I don't have his ADP in front of me, but I digress.
One thing I was gonna say is that, and this is a kind of a moving on from the whole Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson thing, is that if you're in win now, or like I was gonna say, like if your aspirations for this your season in Dynasty, like right now, like say you're looking at your team and you're like, man, my team is stacked. I am looking at I'm like it's championship or bust with this team.
Mm-hmm.
And like, would you really trade away your first round pick right now? I think I'm gonna wait till at some point later in the season for someone that I think is gonna
Yeah,
maybe help me better
hold is really the theme
than
of the
Darrell
night. I think.
Henderson.
I think really the theme of the night is hold. Plus, even in redraft and keeper, we're still just in July. Like you can't really even do anything if you wanted to. You know, we're
Yeah.
we're, we're talking more.
All right, let's
Yeah,
move on
yeah.
to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What you got next? Big news.
Yeah, we
Well,
got more news. We got more news.
news here.
A little
I'm
bit
not
of
gonna say
we'll,
big,
we'll,
but
we'll, we'll not bury the lead. We'll try and go with the more bigger stuff here. We've got some announcements from the NFL concerning vaccinations and COVID. The NFL just informed clubs. I'm sorry, this is from Tom Pelissar on Twitter. The NFL just informed clubs that if a game cannot be rescheduled during the 18-week season in 2021 due to a COVID outbreak among unvaccinated players, the team with the outbreak will forfeit, in all caps, and be credited with a loss for playoff seeding, per sources. He
Okay,
goes on. He
and
goes
the
on and
thing
on.
that I read about it was that they could be facing a forfeit. And
Okay.
also, I would like to throw in the caveat that yes, this is going to be a 17 game season, the first in NFL history. But last year in the 16 game season, they did everything in the world to reschedule these games. And
Fair.
sometimes they were
Very good
definitely
point.
breaking that 10-day grace period or whatever.
Incubation or isolation or
Incubation, yeah, whatever thing. You know what we're saying. You lived
yep.
last year. You,
Yep.
you weren't born
I'm
a
still
month
here.
ago.
I'm still here.
Um, I'm talking about you, the listener,
Oh, right.
watcher, whatever. So yeah, like I was saying, I just wanted to reiterate the fact that they went over the moon to make sure that every game happened last season. Not a single game was canceled.
Mm.
So the fact that like more and more and more people are being vaccinated, the fact that this is like has a potentiality of happening, I'm gonna give it like a 5% chance.
Of
Like
this, you're going to give a 5% chance of it ever coming up during the season, at least during the regular
yeah,
season.
like there's
We'll put
gonna
it that
be
way.
there's probably gonna be a scare here and there, but I don't think it's really. I think the NFL wants every single game to happen as they showed last year.
You know what I hope?
Like I
I
just
hope that I wish some of these. I'll just put it this way: I'm pro-vaccination. I wish some of these folks would come around and maybe put forth a good example. I can't guarantee that's going to happen. From a fantasy football perspective, I completely agree with Josh that it's probably a blip on the radar. I might put it a higher than
yep.
5%, but that's neither here nor there.
I think the NFL
We're in
is just
July and we're all living our lives so far better than we were this time last year, right?
yep, that's for sure.
So
This time last year, yeah, I was
so
looking
let's
outside
take
and
that
being like,
positive.
I feel like I'm a prisoner.
Yeah. So let's
Anyways,
take that
let's
positive
move on with
angle.
our show.
So let's
Let's
take
move
that
on with our
positive
show.
angle with football, fantasy football, and life, man. Let's go.
And real quick PSA: if you're not vaccinated, wear a freaking mask, please. It's
I think
for
that's
your
appropriate.
safety and everyone else who is not vaccinated either. That's
Last
all
bit
I'm
of
saying.
news we've got here.
Oh, you got one more thing?
I got two more things quickly.
Oh, this news segment is so long.
Ramondre Stevenson is on the NFI. I have no
Yeah.
idea
Oh, that's
why.
important.
Amari Cooper for the Cowboys. This is something to keep an eye on. This is why this is the last thing to mention. This is important. He came in on the PUP list. We're not in panic mode yet, but we start talking about this 2 weeks from now, I might be moving my CD ranking. We'll just put it that way. Could see more
Yes,
12 personnel if Amari isn't ready come mid-August, let's say. 12
Wasn't this a
personnel.
thing like last year or 2 years ago, and it ended up not really being a thing?
Specifically with Amari? I don't...
Yeah. But he had some sort of foot injury, and then it really wasn't a big deal.
He's obviously the type of player that's going to get veteran preferential treatment, but this is something to keep an eye on.
All right.
Let's just put it that
But
way.
okay, so here today we are to do a show that is called At the Right Price. And what that means is that Chris and I talk about football a lot behind, like, off the camera too. That's why we're doing this show, is because we can't shut the heck up
Why not?
about
Why
it.
not put it down for
Um,
prosperity's sake, right?
yeah, why not? We have the technology. We thought of we gave it more of a, we are able to, not should we be doing it, that sort of thing. So,
We are willing
um,
and able.
yes. So by at the right price, it means that, like, we like certain players, but maybe not at their ADP right now. So for example, my first guy is George Kittle, the tight end for the San Francisco 49ers. If no one is familiar with George Kittle, his
Mm.
current ADP is the 303. That means the third pick of the third round. And that is in 12-man league, 12-person league, to put it that way. And I wanted to start out with the reason why I don't like George Kittle at the 303. I'm sorry, he's also the third tight end coming off of average draft boards too. And so it's not that I don't like George Kittle as tight end 3. It's that I just don't know if I want to take my tight end 3 as the third pick of the third round. A lot of threes in there, weirdly enough, but then
Mm-hmm.
that's not why I chose it. Um, I just think that after Kelsey and Waller, that I want to wait a little bit on drafting Kittle. I think he gives me enough cause for concern that I want to hit, like, another round or two, probably more like one more round of another running back or a wide receiver coming off the board. So I'd really like him better in the fourth. That's not a big disparity, but that's still, like, there's still a thing. And here's my problem with Kittle, like, his quarterback situation. How long is Jimmy G going to last this season, and is he going to be any good while he is in there? In that same category, if Jimmy G does get bounced out and Trey Lance comes in, is he going to be any better or worse? And is he going to be looking at Kittle? Like, there are quarterbacks out there that just don't really quite look for the tight end all that much, even if they have a good one, like, insert Ryan Fitzpatrick. We'll talk about you in a second, buddy.
Yeah,
Um,
but if you're one that has, if you're a personnel department that has Kittle on your roster, don't you take that into account when you take a quarterback? Is if you can, I understand if
yeah,
there's like a Peyton Manning or something, sure you just take him no matter what. I'm just saying.
I know what you're saying.
Go ahead
It's
though.
just one of
That
my
was my
things.
interjection.
Um, Second is is the San Francisco 49ers wide receiver core. It's probably the best that it's been in pretty much Kittle's entire career with the Niners. And that would be with a supposedly healthy Debo Samuel
Right.
and Brandon Ayuk as of right now. And he's never actually played with those same guys on the field. Well, okay.
Or
He's
three
rarely
guys.
played with those two guys on the same field at the
Oh.
same time. So with
Mm-hmm.
those two guys out there, and I mean, I think we both agree that they're pretty solid wide receivers, you know.
There's been some
Um,
discussion about Ayuk maybe becoming the one. I think there's a size preference there, but go
we'll see,
ahead.
we'll see. That's a
Mm-hmm.
discussion for a different
Mm-hmm.
day. Um, but so with those two out there, are they going to potentially siphon some targets away from Kittle?
Mm-hmm.
It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I have written down here, and this is a really, really small thing, and it's health.
I don't.
He's dealt with some what? He's dealt with some minor injuries. He
Small in
missed
what terms? I agree with you. I think it has to be mentioned. Go
7
ahead.
games last
Mm-hmm.
year. He was banged up a little bit in 2019. He missed like a game, but still, like, and like, I'm saying I'm giving this like a 3 to 5% like cause for concern worry here, but it's just enough. Like, when you factor that in with the wide receivers and the quarterback situation, that I want to bump Kittle down like another round, and like I said, take another running back or wide receiver usually instead of taking
Mm-hmm.
Kittle. One last thing that I have here too is that, he in 2019 he was the tight end 3, and in 2020 he was, or I'm sorry, and then okay, in his rookie year in 2017 he was a tight end 21, which, you're a rookie tight end, whatever.
Sure.
2018 he was a tight end 2,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he was a
The
tight end
start season.
19
Yeah.
due to injury last season,
Fair.
and so,
Fair.
like, there's some disparities in there. I also skipped the 2018 when he was a tight end 2 and 2019 where he was a tight end 3. I'm sorry. I did that wrong. My bad.
Yeah, you got it
Um,
now.
yep. And I just like, once again, I'm not saying that Kittle doesn't deserve to be the tight end 3. It's just where he's get the round and the
I
beginning of the third round
mhm.
where his ADP is. And that I mean, and ADP is average. Like the first word of that acronym is average. So sometimes he might be going in the end of the second and sometimes later in the third. But at the 303
Mm,
seems a little steep for me. Just for
yeah,
me
yeah.
personally.
I'm right there with you, man.
Here's some guys that are going behind
Mhm.
him that I'd rather have. DJ Moore, Raheem Mostert, his teammate, David Montgomery, surprisingly enough, Mike Evans, Kareem Hunt. Like this, like adding these guys to your core group of wide receivers slash running backs is probably going to make your team better than it is with Kittle there instead of them. Personal opinion.
I think for the most part we're on the same page. I think the injury thing has to be mentioned, especially if we go into dynasty angle there, long term, etc. As well as the quarterback discussion. Now, I would pull the reins back a little bit on the quarterback discussion in terms of
I'm not really worried about dynasty at the moment, so like,
I hear you.
just kind of.
We're more in training camp and coming up in August
I'm
and
in redraft mode right at the moment, so
I
you
know,
know.
but it's always pertinent for a dynasty guy. Um, we are usually the type of guys who like to punt at tight end. And the only thing I would say, the last two things I would say is that number one, I'd like to put you to task on Waller and his slot. I guess it was only one thing. I'm sorry. I guess maybe I said the
I'm
second thing
kind of
already.
okay with where Waller's going, which excuse me for a second while I look it up. But
Oh,
yeah,
I had
let
it
me see
just two
here.
seconds
He
ago.
is going
Or ADP,
and
you
he was
mean?
going right at the end of the second round. So I'm okay with that, like taking Waller over like,
I'm not going to
instead of an
say
RB2,
I'm a
I guess.
Kelsey in the first or early second and then bust type of guy yet, but I'm leaning that way right now. He's absolutely worth it,
I
but
think Waller is too though. I'm not exactly
I
scared
do
of
like
Waller's
Carr. I do like Carr.
competition at the moment.
I know it's not the most popular opinion, but I do think Carr's got something to be said here. But anyway,
He'll be good enough.
yeah, yeah.
Anyways, who's a guy that you would like at the right price?
The first guy I want to talk about tonight at the right price, I've kind of beat him to death here in maybe more ways than one, despite the fact that he literally has not cheated on that he has not slept with my wife, despite what Josh may tell you. This is Melvin Gordon. He is currently ADP 6.03. That's the third pick of the sixth round. I think most folks that have been listening, watching, would see that I'm kind of a Javonte guy. Now, I included Gordon tonight because I want to say I'm kind of maybe doing some fence riding here, but let me continue. I feel like a lot of folks are just kind of waiting on the shoe to drop with Gordon. I've heard some pushback about him not getting traded conversation. It's not so much an indictment on Gordon's talent as much as it is a vote in the confidence of Javonte winning the job. I've already heard a little bit of whispers in the bushes. Whatever sources, whatever conjecture, opinion, it's all going to be present in July for sure. It's just that I think at this point in their careers, Javonte is a more talented player. I think he's going to be a better goal line guy. I think he's a better receiver, and obviously between the 20s, at least, again, in my opinion. But I think Gordon still has gas left in the tank. Gordon very well could land in LA with the Rams. He could end up being a journeyman at the end of his career, a la AP or a Gore. I mean, despite losing a step or two, I think he's still got great vision. He's proved himself as a more than adequate receiver. But I think I'm more on if Gordon's ADP fell to like the end of the sixth, beginning seventh, maybe. Again, reminder, currently at third pick of the sixth round. So I might raise him here. I think that kind of correlates to maybe lowering Javonte a little. I'm not going to adjust rankings for the next 2 to 4 weeks. We're not in that mode right now, folks. But I think it only increases the odds of Gordon is traded, maybe even gets a starting job elsewhere. So that has to be considered. And again, we're not drafting, at the end of July. We're drafting at the end of August, beginning of September, etc. So I think that's kind of where I'm at with him right now.
So to recap, you're kind of in the same boat as I am with Kittle in the sense that you don't like him only in slightly different rounds. You don't like
Slightly.
him at the beginning of the 6th, but you'd rather have him at the beginning of the 7th, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Right? Cool.
And I have him currently ranked significantly lower than that, so I think he's going to come up a bit because I think this movement in rosters and personnel is going to mean something at the running back position because this value has been pushed down at the position, and sometimes you're looking for a bargain deal. Yeah, we don't like the T.J. Yeldons and the Royce Freemans and the, at least I don't like the Melvin Gordons of the world, but I've got to raise my opinion on him because of situation. And again, he's got some gas left, I think.
He does, and I don't think the Broncos are getting rid of him.
I don't think
they're trading him away to LA. They don't. They have Mike Boone.
Did we make
behind.
a Snickers ice cream bar bet on them?
No, nor am I going to.
No, that's honestly why I brought it up. I was like, I think it's July, and I think that's where I'm at with him, and I think it's going to be Javante's job, and I think Gordon is maybe elsewhere. Okay. But it's a lot of speculation.
Yeah, right, well, we can fight over that again, but let's not. Wait. Let's move on. Let's move on to Josh Jacobs.
Oh, nice. Okay. I like the area. I like the area of the draft. I like it.
Josh Jacobs is currently going at the 304. That is, for those keeping tabs, he's going ADP wise, 1 pick after George Kittle. And if you're following along at home, my notes are more or less in draft order. Anyways, let's just start with the fact that I really liked Josh Jacobs coming out of Alabama, right? I didn't double check that, but he played for Alabama, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I thought him going to the Raiders was going to be a great move for him. Like, I was like, wow, like the Raiders have a bunch of guys that are just more or less receiving backs and so on and so on, but like Josh Jacobs could come in and if he could catch the ball, like, I mean, I was kind of on board with more or less what every fantasy professional was saying, like they're like, oh, volume, like he's
good receiver,
volume, blah, 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 so on and so on. Well, his receiving work has been very low. Very, 40, very
50
low.
Catches, tops?
Less than that.
In a year?
Yes.
Continue.
Because it was all going to DeAndre Washington and something. What's
did they not have
face?
McKissick for a minute? I thought maybe they had McKissick or somebody like that.
It doesn't matter.
Minute.
It doesn't matter who they're.
name your satellite back, right?
So in 2019, in his rookie season, Jacobs finished as the RB18. That's not bad, But like right now, he's let me see here, RB17 off the board. So right about in that neighborhood. That's not terrible, at the 304. RB17, not bad. In 2018, he was the RB8. The problem with Jacobs' 2020 finish is that there were some guys that went ahead of him in draft boards that were injured. CMC, Saquon, Austin Eckler, in some draft boards, that is. Nick Chubb, Zeke. These guys all missed time due to injury or injuries of some sort. In Zeke's case, it was offensive line. But yeah, I mean, these guys were all consensusly that's a word I made up, drafted ahead of Josh Jacobs last season, and they all got injured and missed time, therefore pushing Josh Jacobs up to RB8. Otherwise, he would have finished at like RB14 or whatever. The running back numbers, like if you look at fantasy points score, like, and that's of course is half PPR fantasy points scored last season. They were kind of down after the top 3. They were really, really down. The scoring was down so far because these guys got injured, or in Zeke's case, dealt with team injuries.
The board, real NFL fantasy and fantasy football. Yeah. It was a pretty bad year for RBs.
Yeah, it was a pretty bad year for running backs. Trust me, all of a lot of those guys were on my fantasy team. Mm-hmm. Don't ask how it happens. It's in a
league where we let them get away with stacking a bunch of ridiculous running backs on top of each other. Anyway.
That was a fair trade.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's couple all that with the fact that the Raiders signed Kenyon Drake. They apparently, and this is all rumors, don't get me wrong, but
July.
And this
right.
It's July, but this also just sounds like John Gruden and the Raiders. They apparently love Kenyon Drake. I don't know why, but they love him.
Do they love him?
They
for
think that
returns?
He's a great pass catching back. So once again,
man, he's produced.
He is going,
I mean, don't
and one of Drake's things.
Yeah, I'm done.
For real?
Yes. I
Anyways,
can't stop laughing.
so one of the things that Kenyon Drake really thrives on is getting, being in open space, and that's something that the Cardinals really struggle to do with him for some reason. And the Raiders that's what they want to do. They want to pass him the ball and try and get him in an open space and everything. I don't know why they're not using Josh Jacobs that way. I don't know what Josh Jacobs did to John Gruden, but apparently he like kicked him in the shin and ran away and said, "Sucker."
I could think of better
I really
receiving
don't
backs
know.
than Kenyon Drake. I think he's more of a one-cut guy at this point. He did have a pretty significant injury, did he not? Isn't he the other Achilles guy? I think he's the other Achilles guy.
I don't know. I
You're the
don't
Colts
know. I
fan.
don't have it written down.
I'm pretty
So
sure it's Achilles. We'll vet that later.
so
maybe.
here's
Go ahead.
also the problem with Josh Jacobs. Last year, at the end of the season, PFF did their annual rankings of how offensive lines finished according to all their overall rankings of each individual position at the offensive line.
Hmm.
The Raiders ended up with being 24th best. Where are they now? Moving into the 2021 season, they're 26th. That has gone down. Now they could easily outperform that. Don't get me wrong. They easily could. They retooled it, and sometimes that works.
We're not the
But
folks to
sometimes, but other
predict every
times,
single
like
offensive line out there for sure. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, but at the same time, it was a real head scratcher of like why they decided to do that. It was like it looked like at times that it was actually working, and other times it didn't. But there's like I don't know what they were doing. This is also an offensive line last year that allowed Jacobs to only have 3.9 yards per attempt, which was 43rd best out of all rushers. That includes quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson and yada yada too. So that's 43rd best. But here's running backs and these are like schmoes compared to where everyone thinks of Josh Jacobs as far as ADP. But Ronald Jones, he had 5.1 yards per attempt. Brian Hill, the no-name running back out of Atlanta, 4.7. Wayne Gallman, who everyone thinks is
we gotta have a qualifying
used
carries
trash.
or whatever. Yeah.
What?
Like amount of carries should be a qualifier there.
These all had significant carries.
Like over 100, I believe, if off the top of my head. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I went
maybe?
through. I used that as a
fair,
you had to have
yeah.
at least 100 carries.
Fair.
And Kenyon Drake was also another one. I'm sorry, I skipped over some names. That's fine. Kenyon Drake was another one. He had 4 yards per carry. Granted, that's only 0.1 more yards per carry per attempt, but still, Kenyon Drake was better than Josh Jacobs. So, what I'm saying is just like, I think I'd rather just wait on Jacobs, and if I miss out on him, that's cool because as of right now, granted, it's still. It's July 22nd as of recording this, and the 23rd is when it gets
we've
released.
got Cam Akers is,
right.
Mathematically,
but still,
that pushes every other running back up X amount of spots. I can't do that math for you.
It.
Well, I guess theoretically one spot, but that's not here.
It moves them up one spot theoretically.
Go ahead. I'm just saying.
But okay, and so here's the thing too: is at the 304. So if you didn't take a running back in the first round. And say you took Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, whatever. Pick one of those two.
Yep,
Maybe you took Travis Kelce.
Ooh,
and then like so now in the second you took a running back, which might have been like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Are you going to end up with Josh Jacobs and Clyde Edwards-Helaire as your two starting running backs? I don't think so, man. Like I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Don't get me wrong. We talked about him real quick like a couple weeks ago, but I want him to be my 2. I want Jacobs to be my 3 at best.
But on the other hand,
it's not going to happen. So therefore, at the right price, I would take
end.
Josh Jacobs. I would not. But at the beginning of the third, no thanks.
Oh, I'm there with you on Jacobs. I could even be like start talking about 4th round, and
that's what I'm saying.
I start actually smiling. I know it seems like a small difference, folks, but bear with me. And the last thing I was going to say is you were the only pushback I was going to give was that you were talking about a scenario where you went wide receiver or tight end or Kelce. You went wide receiver or Kelce first.
Pass catcher.
So exactly. So that does. You're putting us to task there with CEH, and I like it because I'm kind of rising on him a little bit, but I understand your Jacobs correlation there, and I just gave my opinion about I'd rather have him in the 4th. And I don't feel great about Dobbins either. And then we're in the Najee territory, and it's like, oh my goodness, I just want to go. I want to go more pass catcher there, which I think goes back to the point I'd rather go running back,
or yeah,
except
like that.
For that Kelce conversation, because that Kelce conversation is very tempting, and that's all I got.
Cool. Who's your next guy that
Oh,
you
I'm up,
like, but
aren't
at
I?
the right price?
I feel like so like excited and prepared and unprepared all at the same time. My next guy is Kenny Galladay. We've got an ADP of the 7th pick of the 5th round. That's 5.07 for those that are listening at home. Danny Dimes actually does throw a nice deep ball. I
Real
know
quick,
there is a ton of pushback on Danny Dimes, and I am not a fan. So let's move
real
on.
quick.
Yep.
What wide receiver off the board is that?
Hmm.
After the 507, it's probably what, like 26
It's
ish?
similar to where I have him ranked. Give me 2 quick seconds.
Sorry, I just wanted to
It's like
like, I
20,
just wanted
right
to
at
like put him
24th.
put that into context.
I
Like, I
have him
was
at
like,
wide
so is
receiver
that?
23. The
Uh
ADP
huh.
page that I'm using currently, I don't think, does it let me switch to positionally?
Yes.
Oh, where is that
Also, a
again?
word that he just made up that is absolutely grammatically correct.
Positionally?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course it is.
He,
So I think it's in that territory.
okay.
Yeah, forgive me if I don't have that exactly in front of me. But
It's cool.
um,
Keep going.
Galladay, he's going to get a nice share of red zone targets. I think we all can agree there. It's what he does best, actually.
Ooh.
Seems like Kenny G should be more like a mid wide receiver 2, not a fringe wide receiver 2 or outside of the top 24 of receivers. I am fine with Galladay as my wide receiver 2 if I'm going to say go running back heavy in the first 4 rounds, or better yet, as my wide receiver 3. Is like if I go, so I just said wide receiver 3, 4 rounds. So I go running back, receiver, and then Galladay, wide receiver 3.
Mm-hmm.
I feel pretty good about that target share. Let's play a little bit of name game with Galladay. Galladay or Mike Davis?
Davis, because he's a running back.
Is it at least kind of a tough pill to swallow there? Knowing the talent of Galladay? I understand the situation.
No, because Mike Davis is probably going to be my RB3.
Are you messing with me?
What?
In Atlanta, Mike Davis? What?
He would be like my RB3 if his ADP right now
not
is in the 5th round.
I
He
got
would be
you.
like my
I got you.
RB3.
I got you. Similar
And
to
I would rather
Galladay.
have him be
Similar
my
to
RB3
Galladay
than
being
Galladay be my wide receiver 2.
to my point. Yeah, good point. I did.
Or
I
my
did
wide
also go
receiver
there.
3 even.
How about Galladay or Hawkinson?
Galladay, because I want to wait on tight end at that point. It's too early for tight end.
Julio or Galladay?
Julio, but not by much, because we're going to talk about Julio next. Man, you should have.
That's a wide receiver 2 on a team. That's. I'm not disagreeing with you completely at all.
With a better quarterback.
Well, we'll talk about their quarterback later too. Let's move on. That's all I got on Galladay. Do you have anything else you want on Galladay?
I know Julio Jones here. His current ADP is.
No, it's interesting that but no, that's what I got on Galladay. I don't want to spend too much time on him. I just think it's I wouldn't even call it a finite adjustment, but a guy with a 16.8 yards per catch career. I understand his touchdowns haven't looked stellar in 3 out of his 4-year career, but that 1 year, and I think they saw what they needed to see, and I think last year is a mulligan for him. We all understood that he just
so one of Galladay's seasons
just
it was
sat.
So he was hurt more or less all of last year, other than 4 games. In 2019, Stafford missed half the year. And in 2018, he was a rookie. So you can say he has low touchdown totals, but
Small
that's
sample
why.
size. That's exactly what I'm saying. Small sample size. Like I think he might even got hurt in the. Okay, not hurt. His rookie year was very. They felt like he was a little unpolished. They wanted him to sit a little bit. He did not start every single game. He more
Also
like
had
nine games or 6 games. I don't have it in front of me, but that's what more or less happened in his rookie year. So it's almost like a mulligan in 2020 and a mulligan in. I'm sorry, math is hard. 2017, 2018, his first year, and then you have that nice year
I'm
in the
the
middle.
tired one. Gee,
But I just, assuming there's not going to be some upheaval at quarterback, assuming they're not going to be absolute garbage dog poop of a team. The defense wasn't so awful last year. I just think the guy's getting enough targets that he needs to be considered more like a low end wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3, and kind of.
But he's already a low
That's where
end
you
wide
have him,
receiver
actually.
too.
I have him a couple higher. I have him at like 23. You have him at like 26, which would slot right into
That
where
would be a wide receiver 3, not a
I
low end
was. That's what I
2.
was saying. Is to be clear, you have him in that area. I have him a couple picks higher.
And his ADP is wide receiver 21 off the board, by the way. I
I don't
looked it up
think
while
I
you were
want to go
talking.
there. I don't think I want to go to 21.
Yep.
But yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Let's
Next
move
guy,
on to Julio real quick.
Julio.
Julio. His current ADP is the third pick of the fourth round, and that is the 403. He is wide receiver 14 off the board. A little rich for me. I love Julio. Don't get me wrong. You know I
Mm-hmm.
love Julio.
Mm-hmm.
Julio's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Like, I'm pretty sure Julio could kill a man. I would still love him. Um, I guess depending on who that person is, but
mm-hmm.
still.
Mm-hmm.
Um, here's the thing. Like I said, he's going the beginning of the fourth. You just kind of put me in a task a little bit on Kenny Galladay over Julio. I said Julio, and I'm not so sure at the moment. And here's why. I think I might want to change my answer because I think I'm looking at my notes here and I'm like, I don't know. It might be Kenny Galladay. Okay, so here's what I have written down. He's going ahead of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, weirdly, Adam Thielen, Cooper Cup,
I'm sorry. Julio's
and
going in
Robert
front of
Woods.
Amari.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the guy who's telling everybody he's still not ready to go. But okay, go ahead.
He's not ready to go in July. Whatever. I don't care. It's not September.
Exactly. Okay.
Okay. And Julio's been a great guy to have on your fantasy rosters for years, but we're a year or two removed from that. And Julio was getting like 130, 140 targets per year
Mm-hmm.
per
Mm-hmm.
season in Atlanta, sometimes more than that. And you know how many targets that AJ Brown, the Titans wide receiver? Because let me backtrack just a quick second.
Mm-hmm.
Julio was traded to the Tennessee Titans. If you did not know that, well, in 2020, AJ Brown averaged only 8.3 targets per game. It's not good. That is a total of. Sorry. If AJ Brown would have played all 16 games last season because he missed like 3 games, he would have ended up
Sounds
with
right. Yeah.
133 targets. That is the wide receiver one for the Tennessee Titans. Okay, so let's move on to what Corey Davis did last year. And before you
Fair.
interrupt
Absolutely. Okay.
I do think that Julio now is still more talented than Corey Davis. Yes, I get that. And so, yeah, we could probably up these targets totals for 2020 a little bit more because he's
Mm-hmm.
Julio and not
Mm-hmm.
Corey Davis. But
Mm-hmm.
Corey Davis only had 92 targets last year, and that's an average of 5.57 targets a game. That's also not good. Even if you up it to 8 targets a game like AJ Brown had last season, I still think Matt Ryan's a more talented quarterback than Ryan Tannehill. And
Yeah.
that's a before and after for Wheel of Fortune, Matt Ryan Tannehill. Anyways, sorry, just thinking out loud.
It's so
And
funny.
so
You
I'm
maybe
just
like hit enter at the wrong time too. Your statement was so off-putting. Go ahead. Not in a bad way.
and
In a
so
funny
I
way.
just wanted to say that like even last year when Julio shortened season, if you take his nine I'm sorry, his targets per game last season and where he was a little banged up, even in the games he did play, he was still banged up. He would have gotten about 121 targets last year. That's
Mm-hmm.
still more than he's probably gonna like he has a potential of getting in Tennessee this season.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
for all that reasons, I don't really want Julio on my team, but I want him lower. I think I want him lower
Where,
than, and I maybe need to change my
whereabouts?
rankings. I think I want him lower than Kenny Galladay. You know,
I just lost Kenny Galladay's ADP. I think Kenny's all. I'm the one
I
who's saying
think
Kenny
there's
Galladay's ADP is too low. So I think we might be meeting in the middle, so to speak.
yeah.
Are you done there? The only little bit of pushback I'll give there from a devil's advocate perspective is, can we not agree that both me and you, and also from like a NFL personnel running a good team perspective, that Henry should probably get less carries? And can we also agree that maybe
Doesn't mean
Tannehill's
it's
a little better than we thought a year and a half ago? Oops, I just hit a button. Like that.
that's all true. But just because
There might be a little more
Derrick
volume
Henry gets
there.
less carries doesn't mean they don't run other running backs and they just run the same amount.
I think they.
I think they really like Darrington
I think the head
Evans.
coach has, I don't want to say necessary full autonomy, but I think the head coach more or less pulls the reins And I think they want to go. They're not going pass heavy. They're still going to be run heavy. They'll still probably top 5 or 10 easily. I just
Here's
think they
okay.
might
Here's the
need
thing
to.
that
I just think they might
here's
need
a
to throw a
scenario
little
where
bit
they
more
could
to be
go
a
pass heavy.
successful team. I think they might need to throw a little bit more to be a successful team. But go ahead. You were going down that path.
Here's a scenario where they could be more pass heavy is that instead of just relying on Derrick Henry to carry the load because it's AJ Brown and
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Tannehill there, and there's no Jonnu Smith anymore. It is Anthony Ferkser, a guy who we both kind of like as a real deep dark sleeper at tight end. But now you have Julio and you have a more reliable
That's
option.
and we like the
And
tight
so
end
if
a
their
little bit
defense
too.
is
Yeah.
wait. So if their defense is
You say
bad
that.
as
I'm
it
sorry.
was last year, that could lead them to throwing the ball more often instead of just leaning on, oh, we're down by 21. We're still going to run the ball because we got Derrick Henry, you
Couldn't agree
know.
more. Yep.
So yeah,
It's July. We'll wait and see, but I couldn't agree more. There's something to be determined there. And I also don't like Julio that high. Again, I was playing devil's advocate.
wide
I'm there
receiver
with you.
14 is where I'm kind of like, man, that seems
Dude,
like
I have to
that's
take.
a
I don't even like Evans that much, but I have to take Evans and Cooper and Godwin over him. And I also like the Rams guys.
and Robert Woods too. Robert Woods and Cooper Cup, and like I'm like, wow, this is
It's
a
almost
crime
like
against
we planned
humanity.
this.
That and okay, and I wrote all that down before. Um, Man, now you got me saying the wrong name. Cam Akers got injured, so I think those ADPs will rise with those two.
Yep.
But as of right now, and we'll call it July 23rd. Yeah.
Yep.
Who's your next guy?
For the sake of time, I'm going to touch a guy that I barely just touched on for a quick second. When
I'm sorry. Did you just say you were going to touch a guy?
Maybe tonight. I might need a refill. But anyway, Adam Thielen, ADP 4.12. That's the 12th pick. Let's call it what it is, folks. It's the end of the 4th round, beginning of the 5th. He's going to be 31 when the season starts. Got to get that out of the way. That is not a positive side of the argument. That's a negative side of the argument. The argument against Thielen is the impending touchdown regression.
Is that a positive regression?
Maybe.
You don't even know anymore, do you?
I don't. I'm so turned around. It's like I'm in the multiverse. I have no idea what's going on. I argue that the Vikes have done next
progression
to
is regression, and positive regression is a negative, and I don't know anymore.
Up the downside, right? I'm going to argue that the Vikes have done next to nothing at wide receiver and tight end. Rudolph is winding down his career. How did that skip to that line? Rudolph is winding down his career, but he showed he's still a viable red zone
weapon. He's not with the Vikings anymore.
That's where I'm going with this.
Sorry.
Even when they started phasing him out in 2019, he still showed something to 2019. Not so much last year. I think there was a lot of injury and kind of disgruntledness there. But now, of course, he's with the Giants. They continue to have one of the better running attacks in the league. They were 6th in run versus pass ratio with 47.6. That means you ran 47.6% of the time. I know, folks. That's 6th nowadays. Trust me.
Yeah,
folks.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. 3rd in yards per carry at 5.0. They are a competent franchise with a competent, maybe a good quarterback. I expect points and opportunities for Thielen as the 1B/2A to Jefferson's 1A. And I think you might see, I understand we don't like to predict touchdowns. I understand touchdown regression may be coming, but I'm going to put my stamp on here that at the end of the 4th, like I could see similar to Galladay, Thielen, sure. If he falls a tad and I can get him as my wide receiver 3 in that particular draft scenario, yeah, I like the touchdown upside there. Yeah. Jefferson can't do it all, man. And we do not like it. They're tight end. We do not like.
Do you remember
Smith.
last year, like going into the 2020 fantasy season, or like and even NFL season? They're like, yeah, Justin Jefferson, he's a great slot receiver, and then Justin Jefferson says, "Hold my beer, I'm gonna slot receiver the crap out of this." And the guy is like holding his beer, is like, I don't even know what that means, but he just did that.
And Thielen Thielen did with Diggs a year or two ago. Remember that? Everybody's like, Thielen's moving to the slot. I don't know. And they just racked up a ton of targets and catches and still got a decent amount of touchdowns, I feel like, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I mean,
I understand
like
31,
Thielen, don't get me wrong, but I'm definitely
I'm
on board with you that I like him more as a
Julio.
My running back group that had better be a good, real
Right.
solid three deep
Right.
for Thielen
Right.
to be my RB or my wide receiver too. I do that all the time. I don't know why.
But that's
All
all I
right,
got. That's all I got on Thielen. Let's for sake
cool.
of
Here's
time,
my
let's move
last
on.
guy.
Yeah.
My last guy is Ryan Fitzpatrick, also known as Fitzmagic, also known as the guy who has stew in his beard.
Yes.
He is currently getting drafted at 1310. You know what that means? That's the end of the 13th round. How
Whew.
can you say at the right price? Well, I think that price is just about right.
Yeah, that is the
Just
right
about right.
price.
See what I did there? I took a guy and I was like, I love this guy's position right here. I cheated because it's our rules and I don't like to follow rules.
There you go.
Just ask my boss. He hates me. um, I don't agree. Fitzmagic being the 20th QB off the board because
Mm-mm.
that's where he's going at ADP 1310. But what I do agree with is his draft price, and this is how I like to draft
This is one of
quarterbacks:
those
is I
players
wait
maybe we shouldn't
and I
talk
wait
about, so his ADP
and I
stays the
wait and I
same.
wait and I wait and I wait. And yes, I am shoehorning a PSA into this.
Oh, sorry.
But usually, okay, so usually this is what I do is that I go into a draft and I have a quarterback in mind that I can get after round 10, like the 10th round or later. And that's the guy I'm looking for. And how do I do that? As I usually look at their week one schedule. Brian Fitzpatrick is not going to be probably an every week streaming or an every week starting quarterback. He's not. It's just how he goes. He sometimes has bad games against bad opponents. He has good games against great opponents. Sometimes it is hard to predict. But this year, he is starting week one at home in Washington against the San Diego Chargers. You might say, well, the Chargers were an okay defense last year. They lost Melvin Ingram, who was one of their best pass rushers. They also lost their best corner, well, arguably their best corner, Casey Hayward, in free agency. So there's a potentiality. Yep, once again, made up that word and it's totally legit now. That it could be a really great game for Fitzmagic here against potentially lesser Chargers defense. And I'm happy with taking him in the third or the 13th round as my week one starter. Like I'm not investing any draft capital in him, or I'm barely investing draft capital in him. So if he, goes out and lays a 14-point game, I haven't really lost all that much. I'm still getting some points out of him. Yeah, there's that potential of him only scoring like 9 points or whatever because he has that YOLO, kind of play style. But with those other 12 picks, you know what I've done? I have now
Mm.
loaded up at running back and wide
Oh yeah,
receiver with a
absolutely.
tight end in there somewhere. So even if I swing and a miss in week one with Ryan Fitzpatrick, the idea is that the rest of my team is solid enough to withstand a bit of a down week from my starting quarterback. And then I go to the waiver wire and pick up a different one for week two. And I'm still loaded at running back and wide receiver. I'm
How?
like I've been so ahead of this
Mhm.
trend. I don't understand how everyone
Both
was
of us have
so
been.
slow to
I'm not
to
trying to toot my
catch
own
up to
horn,
it.
but I think it's nonsense if people are. Yeah, I assume it
I
rises,
get
and I,
okay.
I
I
think
get
we're
that. I
okay
get that
even
at
if his
some
ADP
point.
rises like 2 rounds. I think we're still probably taking him in the 10th to 11th, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
I get at some point when someone's just like, man, I really like um Joe Burrow in the ninth round. I don't really like anyone
oh
else
for
available
sure.
right
No,
now.
I'm all about that life.
I
Yeah,
get
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Or I
yeah.
like I like Lamar Jackson his running ability, and it's
But
now
you
the
miss
very end of the
sometimes.
seventh.
You miss sometimes.
Like
Somebody else takes him in the 8th, and
okay,
now you're left holding the bag, and you're like, I will fall
and
back
always
on
have a
Fitz
backup plan
magic
too,
all day.
folks.
What's
Just in
that?
case the quarterback you were targeting, gets drafted way
Yeah.
earlier. And
Hmm.
also, if teams start taking a backup quarterback, it's now time to draft a quarterback because you might get left with,
Again, left holding the bag.
Sam Darnold as your starting quarterback for
Uh,
week one, and he might be playing against the best defense in the league.
uh,
Like,
right. On that note, are you taking a second quarterback when you take Fitzpatrick?
not usually, no.
I think he starts all 16. There's nothing behind him. There's
There
no
really isn't.
there's no threat this time. Not like with Tua and other times in his career. I think he's due for the best. best year of his career. I know that's saying something
I'm
because
not
he's
gonna
had
go
some decent
best.
years, and I understand where you're coming from because that is the pushback in terms of the inconsistencies and the interceptions and whatnot. But I just harken back to that New York Jets year was pretty prolific. I don't know what his
Well,
interceptions
that
were
that was
that year,
another
but
point that I'm sorry I didn't make is that like the Washington football team has really built a team that is
absolutely.
made for a Ryan Fitzpatrick play
First and
style,
foremost, that
which is
defense and
throw
that
the
running
ball
game.
deep. And they have a speed burner with Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, who, as we covered last week, has a 4.39 40 time. And granted, that was like 3 or 4 years ago, so he's probably slowed down just a touch. They drafted Diami Brown out of that team that he played for in college. Question mark? I
Notre
don't
Dame?
remember off the top of my head. What's
Dang
that?
you. Notre Dame? I said it as a question on purpose. Now I can't remember. Continue.
Uh, North Carolina? I don't remember. Regardless, they have three fast wide receivers, which is great for Ryan Fitzpatrick. They're not going to,
You're
and
right.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, what?
North Carolina.
Yes, score one for Josh.
You beat me. Dang it. That's usually I usually
I
win
did do
there.
I did do research on Ryan Fitzpatrick here, and Diami Brown was part of it. And the very last point here is that PFF has the Washington football team's offensive line graded as 17th best entering into the 2021 season, but that could easily improve over like the course of the season or even before the season starts.
Hey
They
man,
they
a
invested draft capital
great.
in Sam Cosmi out of Texas. They have their center Chase Rollier or whatever, who according to PFF has improved in every one of his first 4 seasons in the NFL. They traded for Eric Flowers, who may or may not be an every week starter at left tackle, but definitely provides depth behind their current guy, who I don't remember who it is off the top of my head. So yeah, like Fitz potentially, and they still have but Brandon Sheriff at right guard. Go Hawks.
There you go.
Um,
He's probably top 5, top 10, isn't he, in the league?
yeah,
I think.
he's one of the
Yeah,
best. He's been
he's
one of the
pretty good.
best
Yeah.
guards in the league. So yeah, like Fitz is gonna potentially have time to throw. So my only problem with Fitz, and this is not him per se, but it's Antonio Gibson, is that I couldn't find a lot of and I'm not saying he didn't do it, but I couldn't find a lot of examples of Ryan Fitzpatrick really dumping the ball off a lot to the running backs. He's more of a let's chuck it downfield and see what happens sort of guy.
Gotcha.
So that
Yeah.
might not bode well for Antonio Gibson, but that's something that to look into for a later show
This
for
is
sure.
an odd wrinkle, kind of weird
Oh,
to mention, but
go for it.
Flowers is actually slotted to start at left guard right now. I assume the left tackle you were referring to was Charles Leno Jr. Sorry, folks, I have no idea who that is.
No, I have Wes Schweitzer written down here as left tackle,
Fair. They've got him at backup
who I
left
think
guard.
I think
July.
is currently injured.
Okay, that might be why he's listed at backup left guard for some weird reason.
And maybe they're trying Eric Flowers out at guard just to be like, well, you're good enough to maybe get a starting job, and we don't have a tackle job for you, so maybe you could try a guard.
And Fitzpatrick is a vet. He's going to be able to get rid of the ball even behind a mediocre / good offensive line.
Sometimes I wonder if Ryan Fitzpatrick gets the ball hiked to him, and then instead of letting the route develop and just chucking it downfield, he just throws it as far as he can. And is like, well, maybe they'll catch up to it.
Quick last thing I want to say, because we need to move on about Washington football team and in particularly Fitzpatrick, is the backup is Taylor Heinicke, and he did pretty decent last year, like in a super flex. That's worth mentioning. Like if there were, for goodness gracious sakes, an injury to happen, I believe in this staff and this offense this year, and I think they can make that guy.
Is Kyle Allen still there?
Yes, he's the third at this point in July.
Yeah, he might get a spot start over
Heinicke.
Over Fitzmagic if Fitzmagic is really playing that bad.
Hey, we're getting a full slate.
I don't know if he's going to. And once again,
games. We're getting a full slate.
And once again, one quick thing is that this is a guy to start week 1 at, and if he does great, maybe look at him again in week 2. That's what I do with running back. That's what I do with quarterbacks. I draft for the first week, and then I don't care about it until I'll worry about week 2, and week 2 it's time to worry about week 2. I'm not looking at a season long because
In redraft, a hot start
especially
is
even
great to
in a
have.
even
Absolutely.
that also comes with a caveat though, is that if you have 16 out of 6 out of your like half of your league taking backup quarterbacks, you might want to start thinking about drafting 2 of them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
there might be real slim pickings out there for
Yep.
streaming
That was
quarterbacks.
why
You
I
just
brought
have to
up
kind
that
of feel the
that
draft room.
second QB conversation in a single quarterback league.
Yeah. And
I got 2
well,
guys to
who's your
go,
last guy?
and for the sake of time, I'm going to push hard. By all means, give me your 2 cents when you can. I've got Tyler Lockett at ADP 5.11. That's very close to the end. That's the end of the 5th. I understand Lockett is largely viewed as a inconsistent kind of boom bust player. So this has to be mentioned first and foremost. I'm not trying to, gloss over that. He's going around QBs though, and like Edmonds in Arizona, the aforementioned Galladay, Mike Davis. This is the area of the draft we're talking about. He could be your wide receiver 3 if you go wide receiver heavy with your first 3, with 3 of your first 4 picks. You're looking at Lockett as your wide receiver 4 at the end of the 5th. Are you kidding me? What this guy's done with his career, it's kind of silly, honestly. Maybe not his first year of his career, but I just think any receiver can be volatile and can be inconsistent due to environment, coach, QB, philosophy, etc. We talk about Seattle not wanting to let Russ cook halfway through the season or what have you. I get it. It's a thing. It happens. Lockett has shown in the past couple of seasons he is a legit threat both downfield and in the slot. Go ahead.
Quick thing. Are you pro or against his current spot?
I am pro. I'm arguing he might even be able to take him a bit higher. If there's just a bit more consistency from the defense, I mean, they gave up the second most passing yards in the league last year, and just a tad more passing volume, I mean, I'm not talking they need to break their philosophy or just go hog wild and go Kansas City Chiefs or what have you, but just a tad more volume there. He's averaged 79.6 catches, call it 80, 1,025 yards, and 9.3 touchdowns in the past 3 seasons. And I understand it's a bumpy road sometimes, but if he's available at the end of the 5th, beginning of the 6th, pull the trigger. I think it's a great value to have there. And if you could possibly be the type of player where you have a great flex option behind him, I think you've got a great team in front of him, honestly. Maybe offset the balance with your roster by drafting more of a consistent wide receiver 3/4 there for that flex position. That's where I'd go with him.
I know you like Tyler Lockett. I don't.
I know you don't. You used to. Like going back and what are we talking, 4 years? Like in the beginning, first couple of years, you were holding out a little bit of hope. I remember that like vacantly in my brain. I think
but
you liked him. You're right. No, he's proven to be volatile, but
and
I know some other receivers in this area, man, like a Galladay,
and
I
don't
not
want
sure
them either. I could make the argument of why take him there.
It sounds like you're making the argument of going receiver early and running back late, and we both know you're not doing that. I know I'm jumping to conclusions. I'm just saying. Okay, there's an area of the draft.
His 2019 season was a little bit better than last year, but even then, and once again, this is half PPR. Mm-hmm. It is 2 games less than 13 points. Boom game. Mediocre to duds. Boom game. Dud. He
started very strong.
Game. Dud.
He started very strong and they got hurt in like week 6 or something, if I recall my research.
That was 2019.
My point is, receiver is much deeper than running back.
2018, he definitely got hurt, and then he was a little bit more consistent in 2018. But then DK Metcalf came along, who is a much better wide receiver than Tyler Lockett.
I think that's all baked into a 5'11 ADP, man. I don't know. Again, if he's my wide receiver 2, I'm worried, but that's not where you're getting him.
You know where Tyler, you know what kind of kind of league Tyler Lockett's really good in? Best ball, and that's about the only place that's about the only place he deserves to be on your team, because then you just get the boom game.
That's taking it ridiculously far. Where do you have him ranked? You don't have him that much lower than me.
Yeah, he probably deserves to be lower. I was just being kind of nice to him.
I think you're wrong. I think you're dead wrong.
And I don't agree with you either. We can disagree. That's fine. I'm fine with disagreeing with you.
My last guy.
If you were sitting in the room with me here, I mean, I wouldn't be strangling you over it. I would just be like, okay, well, I'm just
don't believe him, folks. Absolutely, we don't all need to agree or disagree. It's July. This is all very fluid at this point. I just think he's a great value there. You got anybody else tonight?
I have some honorable mentions. How about that? Just real quick. Jonathan Taylor, once again, I think he's too high. Damian Harris, though, or running back for the New
New
England
England.
Patriots,
Hmm.
I love him at the 607. I think he's just right there. A real great if you went running back, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. I think he's going to be a real great
Flex.
running back too. Probably not going to get a lot of receiving work. He's more of just a pure runner than a pass catcher, but that doesn't mean that he can't. That sort of thing. And then my last honorable mention is James Robinson at the 405. Still, because it's July, I still think it's still a little too high. But if
Mm-hmm.
there's some reports coming out that they're doing like a split backfield sort of thing, with Travis Etienne and everything, maybe that's a perfect thing.
The only
The
thing I
perfect
have
thing
to
to
say
place
about
for him.
James Robinson or that situation in general is that I know we talk about a lot of opinion and conjecture come July and really August, but I'd like to see some training camp. I'd like to see some
Yep,
preseason. I'd like to see some talk about both these running backs in Jacksonville.
exactly. And I think right now
Because I
where
don't know.
we
I don't
have them
know.
ranked is fine.
I do not know. Yeah, for both of us. Yep.
Do you have any honorable mentions at all?
I do not. I do not. Well,
No.
Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is an honorable
Okay, I thought you
mention.
had one.
Yeah, Carson Wentz. I had him queued up. ADP 11.11. I mean, we're talking about a kind of a sandwich of a year.
Mhm.
Rookie year wasn't all that great. I think the obvious argument angle is here how you feel about Wentz's health and his surrounding cast from Philly, and I
Which,
think
as
it
a
was
Colts
pretty
fan,
poor.
I'm not exactly enthused about his surrounding cast.
Oh, well,
I I'll,
I meant how you felt about how he performed when he was down in Philly and then when he was up in Philly. I think when he was down in Philly, he was very
oh, okay.
unhealthy. I also think he had a pretty poor surrounding cast. I think that 2017 Super Bowl team deteriorated very quickly, both in front office personnel and roster. Or that's the same thing.
Mhm.
Sorry.
So, are you too high or too low on Wentz then?
I think he's a great value at his current ADP at 11.11. I
Okay.
think he's in the same
Okay.
conversation as the Fitzpatricks and Matt Ryan's.
Cool. I think I'm right there with you. I will. I want to
If you're
see.
waiting, if you're really waiting on QB.
I think he's going to be a really great streamer at points this year, and I think a lot of people are not going to be taking him as a starting
And,
quarterback for their week one
and
thing.
Fitzmagic
Now,
was
if
13th
the
round?
Colts are what?
And Fitzmagic was 13th round, right?
Yep.
Obviously, you feel better about Fitzpatrick, right? Today.
Zang.
I'm probably there. I have to pull up my
Cool.
rankings, but that's neither here nor there. Let's wind it up. Wind it up. Wind it down.
Let's wind it down. Let's wind
Yes.
it up to wind on down.
Let's.
This, of course, has been Amazing Fantasy Football. If you are watching us in YouTube format, you can always check out our podcast format wherever podcasts are available. That even includes Samuel, who is going to be located behind your local sleazy Carl's Jr. And he will have it in podcast format. Yes, we give it to Samuel I don't know why he goes by Samuel, not Sam,
Probably
but
better
he's
Samuel than Google Podcasts, though.
yeah, I'm not happy with Google Podcasts right now
No
because
offense,
last week I
folks.
posted the episode and I think it went up around like Sunday night,
It's been a little
Monday morning.
ridiculous. I love a
Yeah,
lot of
it's
other
real
Google
ridiculous.
products, but this has been a little silly.
It is. So we really encourage you to check out our podcast on like Spotify or Podcast Addict. And if you're looking at listening to us on Podcast Addict, please leave a rating and review. If you are listening to us in podcast format, you can always check us out on YouTube where you can leave comments and you can give us a rating, a like, subscribe, that sort of thing. We really appreciate it because we love you, but I don't love him. So, you know,
Apparently, there's
whatever.
somebody in the room
I'll
with them.
get it one of these days. I'll get the finger point one of these days. And so then, Chris, I want you to have a good day.
I'm going to have an amazing day. You too, brother. Bye, everybody.
Everyone else, have a good bye.